All right, so let's get started. Good afternoon, everybody. I am just really pleased to be here today. First of all, I want to acknowledge a lot of people that are out here, just the great men and women and staff people of my office and sexual offense services, the work in the county, who have done really a lot of the work that we'll be talking about here today. But I am just so grateful to see all of you. And I'll talk more specifically about some of that work, but also, too, to have behind me our elected officials, Commissioner Tara Jebin Singh and Board Chair Commissioner Rafael Ortega, and all of the police chiefs here in Ramsey County. One of the things that I think that we do really well here in this county is that we have come to the place where we recognize that collaboration and working together and putting aside, if there are ever differences, to focus on that big picture, which is to get better outcomes for our public and, of course, to serve as best as we can those who have been hurt by a sexual assault. And that work is near and dear to my heart, and it really began a long time ago. It was in 2016 when we came to this recognition, and I want to recognize Emily Heeman here today, who kept talking to me and putting things into my head about the truth that we just weren't getting a lot of these cases. So when a sexual assault victim raises her hand and reports to the police, they will come and do an investigation. But what was happening back then was that a lot of these cases were not actually coming to my office, and something was happening, not in a good way, in the context of how we were showing up to respond to that victim. And also, too, I think from a prosecution standpoint, during that time period, our charging rate was about like 39%. It was very low. So I think we needed to actually have some reflection, but we also needed to have that supported by research and data. So we did an exhaustive 2-year study. We also said that we wanted to be a Start by Believing community and start this conversation with our community about how we respond and support victims of sexual assault. And Karen Long, who isn't in our office anymore, but was the person who led that research. And she came up with a lot of great data and conclusions about what we could be doing better. And I want to just express my gratitude to the law enforcement agencies that are here today, our county board at that time, who stepped up, and we made changes. We invested in more investigators. We figured out ways to allocate resources. We got more community advocates working in our court system, and more importantly, working with the police, right, at the time of an interview and an investigation. All of those things have made a difference. And I want to give special credit to Karen Kugler, who is here today, who I had a chance to visit with earlier this morning. But her dedication to help convene our investigative work group on a very regular basis, but be that person, that point person, to be the one to work with the investigators to charge those cases. And through all of that collaboration, a lot of the things that we said that we would accomplish back in 2019, and it'll be a part of your press packet, you'll see that we've actually accomplished those things, and we're making progress. And this work is a lot like a marathon that doesn't have a finish line. We just keep at it, and we're committed to continuous improvement. We're committed to continuous collaboration, working with all of the various partners here today. And so it's my honor to be able to start off this press event with these opening remarks. And so I'll turn it over next to our Police Chief Chief Axel Henry in St. Paul. Sorry. So, yes, Chief Henry, please. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you real quickly. As you'll look around here, you'll see a lot of different uniforms and certainly a bunch of different patches. What I think is important to note is that the mission is the same. In this county, if a St. Paul victim presents to a Roseville officer or a Moundsville officer or a Ramsey County Sheriff's deputy, they are not going to be turned away. We don't do that here. We will help. We understand that when someone raises their hand and says, I'm in trouble, I've experienced something traumatic, that we are going to step up and help them, and we are committed to that. It's really important that we all look at systems. So whether that's a 911 call or a nurse calls us, However that crime presents itself to us, we always have to remember, and we're committed to that, particularly in law enforcement, because our piece can be a little clunky sometimes, that that victim has got a long path to take. And they are going to have, even if the investigation goes perfectly, they are going to be testifying to these things, and they're going to be living with these issues for a very, very long time. We recognize here in Ramsey County a really important piece of that. Advocacy is a key component to the success. But once advocacy gets plugged in, that piece travels with that person. So that helps that process go all the way through. And I really applaud the Ramsey County Attorney and all the agencies that work here and everyone who's a part of that process, because I think we figured out something really important here in Ramsey County. And that is that regardless of the agencies we work for, that even when things go perfectly, we need to continue to focus on it. We need to continue to examine it. We need to review it and say that perfect process in 2025 might not be perfect anymore in 26. And every individual victim has an individual need and what they deserve. In fact, what we are compelled to do here is to make sure they get the service that best suits their situation and that meets the needs of that process all the way through, so that we can keep people as whole as possible, always recognizing that the victim is at the center of this process, and that has to guide our behaviors. So on behalf of the police officers standing up here and on behalf of the police departments up here, thank you so much for giving me a moment just to say a few words, and I applaud everyone for being here.
So our next speaker is BCA Commissioner Drew Evans, and one of the things that we're announcing today, and it's been a great partnership, but we just when we launched our implementation plan back in 2019, we recognized that one of the things that we needed to do was prioritize forensic testing, because one of the conclusions is that our victims and survivors were waiting too long, right? So we needed to expedite these processes. And our BCA superintendent, Drew Evans, has done a remarkable job of reducing those wait times, not only in Ramsey County, but across the board. And so one of the things that we're announcing today is that we are going to continue for another 2 years with Ramsey County having prioritized forensic scientists available to us for our sexual assault cases as well as our firearm cases. So I'll turn it over to Drew Evans.
All right. Thank you, County Attorney Choi, and thanks everybody for being here today. And when he noted Todd Axtell, I think what's important in that, though, and what I wanted to note for everybody, is that I think it shows you the collaboration that is an ongoing commitment. This is Chief Axtell was committed to this, and you're seeing the reaffirmation today from Chief Henry, really going that this is across generations for the law enforcement and the people that have been here before. You see all of the law enforcement agencies that are here today continue to be committed to this process that's been driven in this county for a very long time in terms of that continuous improvement. And while those systems, as Chief Henry noted, have not been perfect over the years and they've seen a lot of improvement, there's still room to improve, and that's part of what we're here today to talk about and how to continue to do that, to get the outcomes that our victim survivors are looking for in these cases each and every day, and that we are here to support them as they go through that process, to be alongside them as they go through their journey and have to experience that horrific experience that they went through, and that we are doing everything to backstop those individuals and be there for them. As County Attorney Choi noted, the BCA continues to be a partner to all of my law enforcement partners up here, and this is a very collaborative county, as you're seeing here today, and I've always been so impressed working here with my law enforcement partners, how they collectively get behind the ideas that make a difference in public safety and matter in this county, and do it collectively to have that consistency. As County Attorney Choi noted, not only does the support that this county has provide prioritization so that they can collaboratively work together on identifying the cases that are most need to be tested most quickly so that they can get to those answers. It's an important part of our legislature that has stepped up, provided funding for our BCA laboratory, and for the first time in my memory, we don't have an actual backlog, meaning cases that are pending 90 days or more. As part of that, the legislature has set a goal for the BCA and all laboratories to test all sexual assault examination kits in 90 days or less. We are meeting that right now. And that's very important to be able to seek justice in these cases, to get those answers quickly, to put those answers in our investigators for them so that they can follow up on these cases as quickly as possible, to move them to the county attorney's office so that people aren't waiting days, weeks, months, years to have answers in their cases. In addition, the legislature enacted a Track It, which is software that tracks every single sexual assault kit across the state of Minnesota. And then working with our advocacy partners in law enforcement and prosecutors, we continue to tweak that system so our survivors are able to log in and see exactly where their kit is in the process at any given time. We've often heard from our victim survivors that one of the most difficult things to do is to go home and wait, and to not have answers and not understand the process that is happening, and to make sure that there's accountability built into that process, which all of us support in our own organizations. And so that software has been implemented. It's statewide with hospitals, prosecutors, law enforcement, and everybody has collectively jumped in to make that program a success. And so this continued support will put us in a position to continue to keep those times in an acceptable time range, and we will continue to advocate and fight to ensure that everybody provides the proper resources, our state legislature, to make sure that we keep those times to provide them the answers that they need to know. So thank you for having me today, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this collaboration to partner with all of my partners every single day across Minnesota.
Thank you, Superintendent. And next we have our Public Health Director, who is relatively new, and I'm just so excited to have her as a part of this work, because she has already impressed me with her just excitement and knowledge about wanting to move these types of issues forward. And also our County Manager, Ling Becker, who has been an important champion in this work. So I'm going to turn over to Amy, our new Public Health Director.
Well, thank you so much. So while sexual violence is often seen as a public safety issue, it's also a public health issue. So St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, through our SOS Sexual Violence Services, is a frontline responder for victims of sexual violence in Ramsey County. We provide free, confidential 24/7 advocacy and support to victims of sexual violence, which includes a 24-hour crisis line, medical advocacy during an exam or medical care, counseling and support groups, referrals for help with legal and financial issues. In 2024, SOS provided culturally relevant support for 886 clients in 1 year, the highest number in the past 5 years. One of public health's principles is that we bring our work is a focus on trauma-informed care. We know that trauma can have huge impacts for people, from the ability of a victim to remember details, reluctance to discuss the trauma, to adverse physical and mental health conditions that can last a lifetime. So on behalf of St. Paul Ramsey County Public Health, I want to thank our law enforcement, our healthcare partners for recommitting to trauma-informed care with our memorandum of understanding that was signed today. So working together, we can help advance healing and achieve justice by meeting clients' needs in a safe, collaborative, and compassionate manner. By avoiding practices that re-traumatize people seeking help, and by building on the strengths and resilience of clients. One example of how we're incorporating this trauma-informed process is in our work is a new reporting option for victims of sexual assault called On My Terms. SOS launched On My Terms in 2022, and it's as a pilot program in collaboration with St. Paul Police Department. This initiative offers victims the option to report directly to an advocate and decide how far they want the report to go in the criminal justice system, including opting out of a formal investigation. On My Terms demonstrates the partnership between SOS advocacy and law enforcement and highlights a commitment to explore new and innovative ways to support our community while they decide what justice looks like for them. It is through sustained multidiscipline and collaborative efforts like this and all the elements in this memorandum of understanding that we're re-signing today, that we can all be more responsive to our victims' needs and healing and prevent future sexual violence in our communities. So thank you all for being here.
And as Amy referenced, this recommitment in this memorandum of understanding, all of that will be available in your press packet. I believe Dennis will make sure that all of you get a copy of that to talk about the specific things that we're recommitting to. The next speaker is Kayla Richards from the Minnesota Justice Research Center. And before I bring her up here, I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the things that Amy had highlighted about, it's this continuous improvement about trying to recognize that our best is not good enough, that we need to always be thinking about. Chief Henry talked about this as well, about always reevaluating our efforts. And when we talk about racial disparities, oftentimes we don't talk enough about those who have been harmed. And so we know that we have racial disparities in the victimization of many crimes, including sexual assault, but we also know that if our responses are not culturally specific and we're not attuned to different communities and their needs, we're not doing what we need to do around improving the quality of justice and safety for everybody in our community. And so as a part of the work that we have done, we're always looking at ourselves about how can we improve. And one of the things that we recognize is that we should really take a deep dive into understanding the experiences of our victims from various backgrounds, and then learning from that. Because I think oftentimes we can learn by those who are most impacted by harm and crime for us to do a better job. And so we curated and hired the Minnesota Justice Research Center to do an independent qualitative research project that could help inform our work forward. And Kayla's going to talk about some of that work, but because of it, we're also, the second part of what we're announcing today is that we'll be utilizing our civil asset forfeiture account to move $40,000 to dedicate to the next 2 years of training around this issue for investigators, for prosecutors, for community advocates, and then to do some engagement with our community so that we're always connected to those who are most harmed by crime. So with that, I'm going to bring up Kayla next.
All right, good afternoon. How is everyone? What a beautiful day to be talking about an issue that is of such importance. My name is Kayla Richards, and I'm the Director of Community Impact at the Minnesota Justice Research Center. We are a small, nonpartisan nonprofit really dedicated to making meaningful change to our current criminal legal system. And we do that through rigorous research, community-centered engagement, and policy development. When a groundbreaking study revealed that incidents of sexual violence in Ramsey County were being severely underreported and that very few of the reported cases were bringing justice for survivors, the Ramsey County Attorney's Office launched significant efforts to transform its sexual violence response. As part of those efforts, they reached out to us at the Justice Research Center to support their work in engaging survivors directly. We know that Black, Indigenous, and other women of color are disproportionately impacted by sexual violence. Recognizing this, one of Ramsey County Attorney's Office's core objectives was to directly engage BIPOC women survivors to better understand their experience and Ramsey County's blind spots and improve its practice. At the MNJRC, we strive to center impacted voices in our research process. So in 2023, we set out to answer some critical questions like, how are BIPOC women survivors of sexual violence experiencing the legal process of reporting assault in Ramsey County? And why are others simply not reporting at all? What needs to be improved, and how can we involve these survivors in those improvements? We engaged in months of community trust building and held carefully designed focus groups and interviews with survivors to understand systemic patterns and unmet needs. Clear themes emerged from our work, including how factors like trust, power dynamics, and identity impact participants' experiences of reporting their assault. Our research also showed us the importance of community-based supports for survivors. Based on our research, we recommended that Ramsey County invest in SOS and other community-based supports for survivors, that we increase our culturally responsive and trauma-informed police training, and that we improve things like communication and consistency and compassion across the entire system. Finally, we recommended that we continue to involve BIPOC women survivors and center their stories, their lived embodied experiences as part of this transformation. We at the MNJRC sincerely appreciate the Ramsey County Attorney's Office's commitment to examining its current practices and centering those most impacted in an effort to transform sexual violence response in the county. They set an example for counties across Minnesota for the critical self-evaluation and reflection necessary to ensure BIPOC women survivors feel heard and valued as they seek both justice and healing from their experiences. We know that the work must continue, and we hope other counties in the state will also start to examine their practices and commit to change. We at the MNJRC will be here and be ready to be part of that change. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. And last but not least, Commissioner Rafael Ortega will give some closing remarks, and we can take some questions. But I really appreciate, Commissioner Ortega has been here as a commissioner throughout this whole time, since we began our initiative back in 2016 in this conversation, and Commissioner Ortega has been a part of supporting those efforts when we're talking about the investments that we made back in 2018 to get more advocates into SOS. When we started having those critical conversations with city councils across the county and agreeing and committing to be a Start By Believing community. And so, Commissioner Ortega, I just appreciate your longstanding support and commitment to furthering and improving our system-wide, county-wide response. So, Commissioner Ortega.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, I have a litany of the successes of this collaboration, and I feel like if I just read my notes, I'm just repeating what everybody just stated. But I gotta tell you, this all started back in 2016 with it simply saying, start by believing. And that was the seed. And under John's leadership, we're here today. This collaboration is really impressive. When I think back in 2016 and think about how Ramsey County was just acting alone. There was no connection to all of these people here. And to see that we're all together, lifting each other to do this work, it's just impressive. And it's so important. And on behalf of the Ramsey County Board, I just want to say we are truly committed to this effort. We are going to continue this. And under John's leadership, past, present, and into the future, I have no doubts. To be quite honest with you, John has lifted a burden from us because I expect him to get it done. And I expect him to carry the torch to make sure that we provide the services that people need. And this is very much a social justice issue. This is a racial issue. We need to make sure that we take care of our community. And so I just want to say thank you, John, for your leadership. It would not have happened without you. And thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Well, Commissioner Ortega, those were not in your notes.
No.
And
These are the notes they gave me, and not a word.
but truly, though, it is not about one person, and it really is an effort. And I look at and I look at this audience here, what I see is just really dedicated human beings and professionals who know that we just always need to be doing better around serving those who have been harmed by sexual assault and bringing perpetrators to justice. And none of this work could have been done without true collaboration. It's not about the credit. It's really about focusing on what we're supposed to do as public servants, which is to get the job done. To get the job done for the people that have been harmed, to get the job done to ensure that we have safety and justice in our community. And again, I'm so grateful to the chiefs and their agencies and these investigators that are producing better cases. In fact, and the BCA who's sped up the testing, but you'll have in your packet, you'll see this chart here, but like I mentioned before, we had a 39% charge rate back in 2018, and today, 2024, thanks to the great work of our prosecutors, and it's not just Karen, because Karen might charge those cases, but then we've got people who have to actually try these cases, and these cases are hard, very hard, and so I'm just so grateful to the staff here who take on those cases and do that work. And so it's a true collaboration with all of this work. So in last year, we had a charge rate of 64%, so which is really makes me feel good because I feel like that's normal. That's what it should be for this type of case. So with that, I think we can all take questions if anybody has any. And Dennis, you want to moderate that?
Why don't you start out, just because some of you might be new, if you want to just say who you're with, and if there's a specific person you want to ask the question of, or just throw it out and we can decide amongst ourselves how to address that. So, yeah,
my name's Louis Krauss with the Star Tribune. Can you just maybe give a little overview of just what for today's announcement are the most concrete changes, whether it's with funding or adding investigators, or what, and kind of when those changes were made?
Yeah, I guess the public and the media always want concrete things, right? So one of the things that we will do is in your packet, you'll get the memorandum of understanding. So we're agreeing to recommit to what we agreed to back in 2019. And there's a whole bunch of things, and that's just a work in progress. But there's a lot of positive improvements that have come from that. And then, of course, we heard from Kayla Richards today to talk. She talked about the report that they did. It was all of you will have access to that. I think it's hyperlinked probably in the press release. But the title of that was "I Want to Be Heard." And in the executive summary, if you're going to read anything, there are very specific recommendations. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to fulfill those recommendations, one of which is the training that was talked about, right? That culturally specific training for investigators, for prosecutors, for advocates, so that we are serving everybody well, right? And so that's so what we're doing today is we're committing to a 2-year plan to fund out that training and also being committed to engaging our community. Another part of this is that I think that some of the challenges with the pandemic and just some of the workforce issues that are associated with the pandemic, we've just had a lot of moving around. And so what we're also committing to do is trying to do our best to retain people in their current roles so that they can develop expertise, especially like in investigations, having people who are really committed to this work where it's coming from their heart and they're putting their heart and soul into it really makes a difference. And I can just tell you that some of the outcomes that we've achieved as it relates to just being able to have a higher percentage of cases that actually get prosecuted, it can't happen unless we have dedicated investigators. A special thank you to the Sheriff's Office who got a grant and maintained their investigators. Roseville, who we provided some seed funding and they've maintained their investigations. Same for St. Paul, where we provided some seed funding back in 2018, and they've maintained their investigators, and they're going to do everything that they can to retain them and continue to develop that cohesive unit. And so it's that commitment to investing in that the training and the retention of our people, and then of course from a tangible perspective, we also talked about the forensic testing. That prioritization and committing to another 2-year contract on that. And what that really does is that it really helps us minimize the time that we can help, that we get to a place where we need to make decisions or get a better understanding of what our case is in terms of evaluating that case. And then, of course, the advocacy that we want. And we're all here united saying that we want to see more investment in culturally specific community advocates. Because we think that a part of our theory of change back in 2018 is that if we could get more advocacy connected to investigators, we would be getting more of those victims connected to what's happening in the investigations and then ultimately what happens in prosecution. What was really harming our victims at that time, I think oftentimes they would make a report, but they may not hear something for a long time. And that silence was just harmful. And so we recognized that we needed to get an MOU in place, thank you to SOS and our law enforcement agencies, so that advocates could be a part of or be notified of investigative interviews of our victims. So then when the victim would show up at the police station, we would have, they would be met with an advocate, they could help answer questions, and then as the investigations would move along, the advocates could be in better touch with our victims to answer those questions, to let them know that we are here, that we heard you, we believe you, we want to do everything that we can to get to, as we try to figure out what we can prove in court, that as we're gathering those facts, that we're working on it. And I think that and getting that forensic testing time down is a big part of that. And Drew, as a part of the BCA, has not only done that for Ramsey County. I mean, we're paying a little extra to kind of get that prioritization. But if you look at those numbers across the state, those timelines have dramatically dropped, and we don't have a backlog anymore. And that doesn't happen without great leadership. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Obviously, you did a fabulous job.
Oh, okay. I just also, I guess you mentioned at the beginning, ranges, for some cases, they just weren't coming to your office.
Yeah.
And I guess aside from, I guess I'm wondering, like, is that at all because of, with today's announcement, like, was there any just lack of communication, or like were some going to other departments and not taking the cases, or like kind of what were some of the reasons, I guess, for that?
So I would, I really encourage you, I know it's long, but there was a very detailed report that was made public in 2018. And in fact, your organization reported very extensively on this issue, but also on the report that we released in April of 2018. But in that report, what it talked about was the dropout rate that we had with victims, and a lot of it was because of that time, right? So we knew that we needed to reduce that time. We also knew that we heard that we needed to have more advocacy explaining things to our victims, right? So to try to go at the dropout rate. We also learned just by the deep dive that Karen Long did is that our investigators were drowning in cases. And so there were, I can't remember exactly what that number was per investigator, but it was exceptionally high. And so we knew at that time that we needed to take immediate action, and that's why we were able to get a grant, some seed funding for Roseville, seed funding for St. Paul, and just recommitting to, making sure that we had dedicated investigators working on this. Another thing that was talked about was the fact that, we are charging, that we charge like a very low number of cases. We did actually win all of the cases that were in the report at trial, but I think it showed us that maybe we should be looking at these cases a little differently. And that was not easy work on the part of the prosecution office, because that means that we have to, of course, we charge people when we believe that there's enough information and evidence to support a conviction, but to recognize that some of these cases aren't going to be clear-cut. And I think we've made a lot of advances in prosecution in trying to better understand how we get better investigations so that we can have stronger prosecutions. Mm-hmm.
Anything else? I'll just remind you, it's in your packet, but these are just visuals to jog your memory. But behind this, which is something we will send out in about an hour or so, is the full report for, on what we heard, on my terms, and then some of the other backup material that we've referred to here along the way, to try to make it as easy as possible for you to kind of dive back into that pool a little bit. But, so that should be coming to all of you and your colleagues in the next, hour or so. So, yeah, and we're always here for questions. All right. Thanks, everybody.